This part of the memoir will give you goosebumps. My name is Mark, and I will share with you the most interesting story of life at the front. The mud clung to our boots like it wanted to hold us back, like the earth itself was trying to warn us of what waited ahead. We moved in a staggered line, low inside the trench, rifles tight against our chests, heads down against the wind. The sound of distant artillery rolled like thunder, constant and unsettling. I was behind Jackson, who was behind Foster. Riley brought up the rear. We'd been ordered to reinforce a forward point under threat of encirclement. No one needed to explain what that meant. We all knew the pattern: hit hard, fall back, then strike from both flanks, cut the artery, bleed it out. 2 minutes out, Jackson called back over his shoulder. The trench snaked left, then sharply uphill. As we crested the rise, a deafening crack split the air. Dirt and fire exploded near the front of the line. "Down!" Harris roared from the lead. We hit the mud. Shouts erupted. Gunfire started from the ridge line above the trench, wild and sudden. We scrambled to cover. Craters, half-collapsed walls, sandbags torn apart by rain and time. Rounds zipped inches above our heads. "They've got elevation," Ramirez shouted, pressing his helmet down. "Keep moving," Harris barked. "Point's just ahead. We hold there." We pushed forward in bursts. Jackson threw smoke, and under its cover, we crossed the final stretch. At the crest was a half-buried bunker, a concrete beast scarred by years of blasts. Inside were a few soldiers, eyes wide with exhaustion. One of them, older, dirty bandage on his arm, looked up as we entered. "Thank God," he muttered. "We weren't going to hold much longer." "You are now," Harris said. "We're here." We took positions. I found a narrow firing slit, heart pounding. From here we could see the tree line. Shadows moved there, distant and slow. They were preparing for another wave. Riley slid in beside me. "This spot's better. Good angles, better cover." Foster crouched just behind us, eyes wide, knuckles white around his rifle. The silence settled again, but it wasn't peace. It was the quiet before. "We hold this line," Harris said over comms, voice calm, low. "We hold, or no one else does." And we waited. The storm was coming. They came fast, breaking from the tree line just as dusk fell. Shadows in formation, charging low. "Contact left," Ramirez shouted. Gunfire answered, sharp and relentless. Muzzle flashes painted the bunker walls, and the space filled with heat, smoke, and the deafening rhythm of war. Foster reloaded beside me, hands shaking but fast. Riley and Jackson peeled off to reinforce the flank, moving without hesitation. I tracked targets through the scope, squeezing off short bursts. My breathing was shallow, pulse thundering. Grenades thumped near the trench wall, dirt, rock, shouts. Someone went down, one of the defenders already stationed here. Harris's voice came over comms. "Hold your sectors." No step back. The push didn't stop. Waves of them kept coming, even as we cut them down. Then, slowly, they started to fall back. No retreat signal, no flares, just movement. Scatter, then vanish. Silence crept in. We held fire, fingers still tense on triggers. Minutes passed. Nothing. "They're gone," Jackson said quietly. Harris confirmed it. "They've pulled out. No pursuit. Stay alert." And just like that, the shooting stopped. We had held. Barely. No cheering. Just silence. And the sharp, uncertain edge of temporary peace. We moved back under the cover of low clouds and dying light, the world around us scorched and smoking. Our boots dragged through mud mixed with spent casings and ash. No one spoke. We didn't need to. The silence between us said everything, the kind of silence that follows survival. By the time we reached the dugout, The sky had gone from red to black. Inside, it was warm, cramped, dimly lit, and reeking of oil and old coffee, but warm. Someone had lit a stove. Ramirez passed out water. Jackson dropped into a chair, like gravity had doubled. Foster leaned his head against the wooden wall, eyes half closed, whispering, "Just 5 minutes." Captain Harris stood at the center, holding a paper in his gloved hands. He waited until everyone had found a place. Then, in his usual quiet tone, he said, "This came through while you were out there." He began to read. It wasn't from command. It was from a soldier named Domers, one of the ones we pulled out 2 weeks ago. He wrote to say thank you, said he owed his life to our unit, said we gave him hope, that even in all this mess, we reminded him what brotherhood meant. No one interrupted. Foster blinked back something. Even Riley, stone-faced as always, bowed his head. I just stared at the flicker of the lantern, feeling a strange calm settle deep in my chest. When Harris folded the letter and tucked it into his coat, he looked at us like a father would. "You did damn good work today. Get some sleep. We'll take what rest we can." We didn't need to be told twice. Blankets were pulled tight, boots loosened, helmets hung. I lay back against the wood, listening to the slow, soft breathing of exhausted men. For the first time in days, I let my eyes close without guilt. We had made it. For now, I felt really tired and wanted to finally go to bed. I don't remember closing my eyes. One moment I was staring at the ceiling. The next I was deep in some half-dream where the world wasn't mud and fire. I think I saw my brother. He was laughing at something. I couldn't hear what. His voice got lost in the hum of distant thunder. When I blinked awake, the lantern had burned low. A few soldiers still stirred, shifting in sleep, mumbling fragments of dreams. Foster lay curled against his gear like a child. Jackson snored softly, his hand still resting on the grip of his rifle. Outside, it was quiet. Too quiet. I sat up slowly, listening. No shelling, no chatter. Just wind. In the corner, Ellis sat awake, eyes scanning the dugout door, like he expected something to come through it at any moment. "Can't sleep?" I asked. He shook his head. "You learn to sleep light out here. Every quiet night's a coin toss." I nodded, stretching my legs. My knees ached like they belonged to someone twice my age. I rubbed my temples, trying to shake the fog. Ellis leaned closer. "You ever get that feeling something's not right? Like even when nothing's wrong yet?" I stared at the door, too. "Yeah, I've had that feeling since we got here." A beat passed. Then the radio hissed. It wasn't loud, but in that silence it sounded like a thunderclap. Harris was across the room in an instant, crouched beside it, turning the knob, adjusting the frequency. "Say again," he said. A crackle, then a voice. "Enemy movement detected East Ridge. Intercepts suggest encirclement. Repeat, possible ring formation. Time frame unclear." "Orders?" Harris didn't move, didn't speak, just stared at the receiver like it had just spoken a death sentence. He stood, cleared his throat, and looked at us. "Wake them," he said simply. "All of them." And just like that, the rest was over. The night turned sharp again. Blankets tossed aside, rifles checked, boots laced with shaky hands. No shouting, just quiet, tense urgency. The kind of calm before everything shatters. We didn't know how long we had. An hour, maybe 2, maybe less. But every one of us knew what was coming. And none of us were ready to die in our sleep. We moved like ghosts through the trench, lit only by the narrow glow of red-filtered lamps and a half-moon overhead. No shouting, no running, just the scrape of boots, the occasional cough, the click of a round chambering home. The kind of silence that wasn't calm, it was calculation. Captain Harris walked ahead with a map in one hand and his sidearm in the other. He didn't need to explain much. The situation was clear. The enemy had pulled back not to retreat, but to reposition. Now they were coming back, smarter, with numbers and a strategy that could bury us alive. "Ridge here," he pointed as we gathered near the comms tent. "They'll hit from the east, hard. 2 waves minimum. Meanwhile, they'll try to close a loop around us from the north. Classic ring. If we don't break the loop before it snaps shut, we're done." Riley cracked his neck. "So we cut the wire before it tightens." Harris nodded. "Exactly. We split into 2 fire teams. One stays here and fortifies this trench line. The other flanks north through the dry ravine. Silent, fast, hit them before they hit us. Mark, you're with me on the flank." I didn't even blink, just nodded. I felt it in my chest. Something had shifted. The fog that had haunted me since Alex's injury was gone, replaced by something clear, sharp, almost cold. Purpose. We moved out fast. Ellis, Jackson, Riley, and Foster formed the rear team. Ramirez and I followed Harris through the ravine. Narrow, overgrown, dark. Every step felt like a countdown. "Eyes up," Harris whispered. No talking. We moved in low formation, rifles scanning every tree, every broken stone. A wind howled up the draw, masking the shuffle of our boots. Then, movement. Not us. 2 enemy scouts slipping through the brush, whispering. Harris raised his hand. 3 fingers. 2. 1. We opened fire in one silent, deadly volley. Both targets dropped. No sound. No warning. Harris stepped forward, checked their gear. Maps, marked routes. They were the tip of the spear. He looked back at us. "They're already here," he said quietly. "Let's ruin their plan." The first shots came just as we reached the overlook above the eastern path. Not ours, theirs. Tracer fire lit up the trench line below, red streaks slicing the night. They'd started their push, right on time. We were above them now. They didn't know. Harris motioned silently. We took positions along the ridge, weapons ready. From up here, we saw everything. Rows of infantry moving in tight formation, shadows dragging equipment, whispers carried on the wind. They were preparing for total encirclement. Then Harris gave the nod. We opened fire. Controlled bursts rained down from the ridge, cutting through their flank like lightning through dry brush. They scattered, chaos erupting in seconds. Grenades landed, ripping the earth. Ramirez dropped 3 with perfect rhythm. I picked off 2 near the rear with steady shots, breath calm. One of them bolted straight toward us, young, panicked, shouting. Harris met him with a single shot. The enemy line broke. Radios flared with chatter. Down below, we saw our trench team light up the advance. Jackson, Foster, Ellis, fighting like wolves defending their den. Every inch mattered now. Then came the twist. A second enemy wave surged from the western slope, unexpected, hidden in silence. Harris swore. "We're splitting. Ramirez, Mark, hold this ridge. I'll flank and distract." He vanished into the dark like smoke. We braced. Incoming fire snapped past us. We ducked low, returning shot for shot. Dirt exploded inches from my boots. I fired until my mag was dry, reloaded without thinking. Below, Harris opened up from a side position, drawing fire. The western wave split, half chasing him, half turning back downhill. That was our moment. "Now!" Ramirez shouted. We surged down the ridge, close quarters now. I don't remember each shot, just motion, breath, adrenaline. One man lunged at me. I met him stock first, then finished the job. When the dust settled, the line was gone. Smoke, silence. Hours. The encirclement never closed. Back at base, Harris reappeared an hour later, mud slicked, tired, grinning. "Nice work," he said. "They tried to trap us." He looked at me, then at Ramirez. "But tonight," he added, "we sprung it first." And just like that, the storm passed. For now. My name is Mark, and I will lead my comrades to victory no matter what.